after he kept calling them stiff-necked people. Well, they were judged. Judgment came their way, and the judgment could take many forms, but it was never a good thing. It was always meant to bring them back to God. There was a punishment involved with that. When you look at the concept of stiff-necked, and you think, you just really tensed up, and I'm not going to go back to that first grader. I mean, how many of us, I'm not going to do it, and you can't make me do it, and they just, and you see Mama dragging them out of a Walmart, and but when we there are things that I do whenever I'm working in my shop, just messing with something. That if something is, whether it's wood, anything, if it's something that stays pliable, I can move it around a little bit. When it becomes stiff, brittle, if I don't take measures that will soften it up, if I don't take measures that will or respond to what I'm doing, for those of you who have been watching our morning devotions, and whenever a few weeks ago I was talking about my truck and talking about some of the things that I was doing and breaking bolts, and there were things I was doing to toughen that up, some penetrating oil, maybe add a little heat, maybe add a lot of heat. I didn't have enough heat to just make it liquid so it wouldn't be tight, but these old bolts didn't want to move, and eventually the pressure that was on them broke them. That's what happens when we are stiff. It's what happened with the nation of Israel when they became stiff-necked. Those things that are stiff become brittle, and when too much pressure is applied, they break. And so God says, I don't want to take you to the breaking point being judgment. I don't want to take you to that breaking point. I want you to stay pliable, and I want you to stay willing and able to conform to my will wherever my will may take you, but stay there so that you don't become brittle. Don't be stubborn about those things. And that takes discipline. It takes discipline in our own lives, that personal discipline, but it takes discipline in listening to God's discipline. We talk about discipline sometimes, and we have a bad connotation about it, that discipline is something that happens because we have done something wrong. And that's not always the case. Discipline is a manner of guiding us into the right way. To stray, we need correcting. And when we are not stiff-necked, when we are pliable in God's hand, He can move us in that right direction instead of us being stubborn. So we need to heed His rebuke, and we need to learn humbly from the discipline that we are given so that we can grow in righteousness. Another interesting thing, this goes back to the first question about the first grader, and how do you teach authority, how do you teach discipline to this little kid? I believe Kathy said it, about modeling that for others. There are things I can learn from y'all, and y'all can learn from each other by watching how we live our lives. Whenever we see those around us who obediently submit to God's will in their life, it can serve as an example for me and for you to be able to say, you know what, I have seen what it's like for them to follow God, and it makes it in their life, kind of like those infomercials. Your results may vary, but you have this. You have a testimony, you have a witness of what someone else has done. So that becomes a form of discipline in our lives, because it's not a point of correction, it's a point of guiding us in the right way. We're not perfect people, in spite of what I tell my kids that I was whenever I was their age, but We're not perfect people, but we watch others to see how they respond to correction. So it's, as someone begins to, do you have two people, or do you have more respect when a person battles against something they were wrong on, whatever it is? We don't have to make it, it doesn't have to be anything huge, but somebody was obviously wrong. Do you have more respect for them when they battle against it and make excuses, or whenever they say, you know what, I was wrong, and I have strayed from that which I was supposed to do, and now I need to correct, whether it's something I need to do, whether it's consequences that need to be paid, whatever it is. As you watch that person, where do you gain the respect? Somebody who battles against saying that they were wrong, or someone admitting and accepting reproof and correction? Um, we often we see those around us, and when, again, nobody's perfect, and so when somebody steps outside of where they ought to be, whenever they admit that and say, I was wrong and I need to move forward with this, then we gain. It teaches us a lesson as well. Wow, I spent way long on that. Let me jump down here to verse 12. Um, verses 12 through 14. If a ruler listens to lies, all his officials will be wicked. The poor and the oppressor have this in common: the Lord gives light to the eyes of both. A king who judges the poor with fairness, his throne will be established forever. Okay, we're not just talking about political things here. I mean, when you talk about a king, you're talking about the ruler. You're talking about the poor and the oppressor, meaning those who are weak and those who are strong. But really, the morality of leaders affects those who are under them. The morality